My name is Tessa Calloway, and I have been the family disappointment for exactly 15 years, 3 months, and 11 days. I know the exact count because I started it the day my older sister, Margaux, stood up at Thanksgiving dinner in our mother's house in Baton Rouge, raised her glass of Riesling, and said, "To everyone at this table who's doing something with their lives, and to Tessa, who teaches." She said, teaches, the way you'd say, collects parking tickets, or, still lives in her car. A soft little word delivered with a soft little smile that landed like a grenade nobody acknowledged. I was 26 years old. I just accepted my first full-time position at Westlake Preparatory Academy in Shreveport, Louisiana, a Title I school where 68% of students qualified for free lunch, and the science lab had exactly 4 working microscopes, 2 of which were held together with duct tape and optimism. Margaux was 30 at the time. She'd just made junior partner at Guillory & Pratt, a commercial real estate firm in downtown Baton Rouge. She drove a white Audi Q5 with leather seats that smelled like ambition, lived in a townhouse in Bocage with 12-foot ceilings, and had married Preston Arsenault, a man whose family name was on a hospital wing, 2 street signs, and the side of a building at LSU. In the Calloway family hierarchy, Margaux was the diamond. I was the participation trophy. Our mother, Vivian, didn't disagree. She just did what she always did, changed the subject, poured more wine, and asked if anyone wanted seconds on the Merleton casserole. In our family, silence was its own kind of verdict. So I stopped bringing it up. I stopped explaining my job. I stopped trying to make, I teach 9th grade biology at an underfunded school in Shreveport, sound impressive to people who measured success in square footage and starting salary. I just taught. Here's the thing about teaching at a school like Westlake, nobody tells you how it changes you. You walk in thinking you're going to save kids. You walk out realizing they saved you. My first year, I had a student named Devonte Bridges who couldn't name a single planet in the solar system but could take apart a lawnmower engine and rebuild it blindfolded. His hands knew things his transcript never captured. I stayed after school with him 3 days a week, building model rockets out of PVC pipe and soda bottles, until the day he launched one so high it cleared the roof of the gymnasium and landed in the faculty parking lot on Principal Henderson's Buick. Henderson wasn't happy about the dent. But he was very interested when I showed him Devonte's designs, hand-drawn schematics, precise to the millimeter, annotated with calculations that a kid who was getting D's in math shouldn't have been able to produce. "This kid's an engineer," I told Henderson. "He just doesn't know it yet." "Then show him," Henderson said. So I did. And that was the beginning of everything. I started an after-school STEM club with 11 students, a budget of $400, and a storage closet that smelled like wet carpet and broken dreams. We met on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I bought supplies with my own money, not because I was noble, but because the school's science budget was $3,000 a year, and half of that went to replacing the goggles kids kept taking home. By the end of that first year, 2 of my 11 students placed in the Louisiana State Science Fair. Devonte won 2nd place in engineering with a water filtration system he designed using activated charcoal and a repurposed 5-gallon bucket. The judges, professors from Louisiana Tech, pulled me aside and asked where this kid had been hiding. "He wasn't hiding," I said. "Nobody was looking." That sentence became the first line of the grant application I wrote that summer, a 12-page proposal to the National Science Foundation's ITIS program for a STEM pipeline initiative targeting low-income students in Northwest Louisiana. I wrote it in my apartment at 2 a.m., fueled by instant coffee and a stubbornness I'd inherited from my grandmother, a woman who raised 6 kids in a shotgun house in the 9th Ward and once told me, "Baby, the world don't hand you chairs at the table. You build your own table." The grant was funded for $340,000 over 3 years. I didn't tell my family. The program was called Launchpad. I named it myself, at 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling of my 1-bedroom apartment while a mosquito the size of a small aircraft buzzed near my ear. It wasn't a clever name. It wasn't a branding exercise. It was just what it was, a place where kids who'd been told they were going nowhere could find out they were wrong. Year 1, 32 students. A borrowed classroom. Donated laptops from a church in Minden that was upgrading their office. Volunteer mentors from Barksdale Air Force Base who taught the kids about aerospace engineering using paper airplanes and patience. Year 2, 78 students. A real budget. Partnerships with Louisiana Tech, Grambling State, and Southern University. A robotics team that went to nationals in Detroit and didn't win, but walked through the doors of Cobo Hall with their heads up, wearing matching polos I'd ironed myself the night before, and competed against kids from schools whose science budgets were bigger than Westlake's entire operating fund. Year 3, 141 students. The NSF renewed the grant. The Shreveport Times did a story. Then the Baton Rouge Advocate. Then a small segment on the local ABC affiliate that got picked up by a regional education blog. And still, at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday dinner at Vivian's house in Baton Rouge, Margaux introduced me the same way. This is Tessa. She teaches. Preston would nod politely, the way you nod at someone who tells you they're really into birdwatching. Vivian would smile and steer the conversation back to Margaux's latest deal, a mixed-use development in Mid-City, a retail plaza in Gonzales, whatever monument to square footage was currently making her daughter money. Nobody asked about Launchpad. Nobody asked how many kids we'd sent to college that year. Nobody asked about the girl from Vivian, Louisiana, population 3,600, who'd won a full scholarship to MIT because she'd spent 2 summers in my program learning computational biology using free software and a refurbished Dell laptop. They didn't ask because they didn't know. And they didn't know because I stopped telling them. That was my flaw, and I own it. I let their disinterest harden into distance. I stopped sharing. I stopped inviting them in. I told myself it didn't matter, that the work was enough, that I didn't need Margaux's approval or Vivian's attention. And maybe that was partly true. But it was also partly pride, the stubborn, quiet kind that looks like humility but is really just hurt wearing a better outfit. By year 10, Launchpad had become something I never planned. The program operated across 14 parishes in Louisiana. We'd expanded from one school to a network of 43 partner schools, each with trained STEM coordinators I'd personally mentored. We had corporate sponsors, Dow Chemical, Cleco Power, the Cyber Innovation Center in Bossier City. We had a $4.7 million annual budget, a staff of 26, and a track record that made program officers at the Department of Education return my emails within the hour. 1,400 students had gone through Launchpad and enrolled in college. Not applied, enrolled. 91% of them were first-generation college students. 63% were Black or Latino. 44% were young women. And the 6-year graduation rate for Launchpad alumni was 78%, nearly double the national average for low-income STEM students. I'd been invited to present at the National Science Board. I'd testified before a Louisiana Senate Committee on STEM education funding. I'd been profiled in Education Week and featured in a Stanford Social Innovation Review case study. The governor's office had called twice about a potential state-level expansion. And at Thanksgiving, my sister still said, "This is Tessa. She teaches." I let her. Every single time. Because by then, the silence had become a kind of armor, and I wasn't sure I knew how to take it off. Then, last September, everything collided. Margaux's son, Elijah, was 17. He was a senior at Episcopal High School in Baton Rouge, a private school with a tuition that cost more than my first 3 years of salary combined. He was bright, legitimately bright, with a 3.8 GPA, a near-perfect ACT score, and a genuine passion for environmental science that I'd noticed years ago, when he was 12 and spent an entire Easter dinner asking me about coral reef bleaching instead of hunting for eggs. I liked Elijah. I always had. He was the one member of that family who looked at me and saw a person instead of a punchline. He'd text me articles about marine biology. He'd ask me to explain CRISPR over FaceTime. Once, when he was 14, he told me, "Aunt Tessa, I think what you do is cooler than what Mom does." Don't tell her I said that. I didn't tell her. But here's what nobody in my family knew. Preston and Margaux's financial picture wasn't what it used to be. The real estate market in Baton Rouge had softened. Guillory and Pratt had lost two major clients. Preston's family money, the hospital wing, street sign, building on campus money, had been eroding for years, tied up in trusts and properties that generated prestige but not liquidity. Elijah needed financial aid. Real financial aid. Not a small merit scholarship that covered books, a full ride. His college counselor at Episcopal, a woman named Mrs. Tran who'd been placing kids in top programs for 20 years, sat him down in October and told him the truth. Elijah, your family's expected contribution is going to price you out of most need-based aid at selective schools. But there's one program in Louisiana that offers full-ride STEM scholarships to high-performing students regardless of family wealth. It's need-aware but merit primary. It's called Launchpad. The application opens November 1st. Elijah looked it up that night. The founder and executive director was listed on the website, along with a photo taken at the National Science Board presentation, a woman in a navy blazer, standing at a podium with the NSF seal behind her, mid-sentence, hands in motion the way they always were when she was talking about something she loved. Elijah called me at 9:47 p.m. Aunt Tessa. Launchpad is yours. It is. But, Mom always says you just teach. I was quiet for a moment. I do teach, Elijah. That's not the insult your mother thinks it is. He applied. I recused myself from the selection committee immediately, called my deputy director, a woman named Janelle Robichaud who'd been with the program since year 3, and told her that applicant number 4471 was my nephew and I would have zero involvement in the review process. Tessa, you know I'm going to evaluate him the same as everyone else, Janelle said. That's exactly why I'm telling you. Elijah's application was extraordinary. Not because of his grades or his test scores, we had hundreds of applicants with similar numbers. It was his personal essay. He wrote about spending summers at his great-uncle's fishing camp in Henderson, Louisiana, watching the Atchafalaya Basin change year after year, the water levels shifting, the cypress trees thinning, the crawfish harvests shrinking. He wrote about understanding, for the first time, that environmental science wasn't something that happened in a lab. It happened in the water his family had fished for 4 generations. Janelle called me in December. He's in. And Tessa, I want you to know it wasn't close. He was top 15 out of 600 applicants. The essay alone would have gotten him in. I cried in my office for 10 minutes. Then I called Elijah and told him. He screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Does Mom know? I asked. Not yet. Can I tell her myself? At Christmas? It's your news, Elijah. Tell it however you want. Christmas dinner at Vivian's house. The same dining room, the same lace tablecloth, the same Merloton casserole, the same Riesling. Margaux was in her usual form, holding court, telling a story about a client who just closed on a property in Prairieville, laughing her sharp, bright laugh that filled every room like perfume. When the conversation hit a natural pause, Elijah stood up. I have an announcement, he said. I got a full-ride scholarship. Full tuition, housing, books, research stipend, and a guaranteed summer internship. It's through a program called Launchpad. Vivian clapped. Preston raised his glass. Margaux beamed, the proud mother, already composing the Facebook post in her head. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Margaux said. Who runs this program? Elijah looked at me. I looked at my plate. Aunt Tessa does, he said. She built it. 15 years ago. It sent 1,400 kids to college. It has a $4.7 million budget and partnerships with every major university in the state. The governor's office wants to expand it statewide. The table went silent. Not dramatic silence, not the kind you see in movies where a glass shatters or someone gasps. Real silence. The kind that sounds like air being sucked out of a room very slowly, like the whole house took a breath and forgot to exhale. Margaux looked at me. I could see her processing. The same sharp, analytical mind that closed million-dollar deals was now recalculating 15 years of assumptions in real time. Is that true? She asked. Not hostile. Not defensive. Genuinely asking. Yes, I said. Why didn't you ever tell us? And there it was, the question I'd been waiting for, and dreading, for 15 years. The question that had 100 answers, all of them true, none of them simple. I set down my fork. Because every time I tried, someone changed the subject. Because every time I walked into this house, I was Tessa who teaches, and after a while, I stopped believing you wanted to know more. That's on me too. I should have pushed harder. I should have made you listen. But it gets tiring, Margaux, being dismissed by the people who are supposed to know you best. Margaux's eyes were wet. Not crying, Margaux didn't cry in public, but wet in a way that told me the words had landed somewhere real. Vivian, who hadn't spoken in what felt like an hour, set down her wine glass and said, very quietly, I should have asked. Every year, I should have asked. My mother had never said anything like that to me. Not once in 41 years. And it didn't fix everything, a single sentence can't undo 15 years of invisible, but it cracked something open. A door I'd sealed shut. A window I'd painted over. Elijah, bless him, broke the tension by saying, so does this mean I get extra credit? Everyone laughed. Even Margaux. After dinner, Margaux found me on the back porch. I was sitting on the same wrought iron bench where we used to eat popsicles as kids, the one with the rust stain shaped like Florida that our father had always meant to fix before he died. She sat down next to me. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The December air in Baton Rouge was cool but not cold, 62 degrees, the kind of weather that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. I didn't know, she said finally. I know. I should have known. Yeah. You should have. Another silence. She picked at the rust stain with her fingernail. When I said, she teaches, I didn't mean it as. Yes, you did, Margaux. Maybe not every time. Maybe not consciously. But you meant it the first time, and every time after that was just muscle memory. She didn't deny it. That was new. I was jealous, she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Not of your career. Of how sure you were. You walked away from everything, the money path, the prestige path, everything Mom and Dad taught us to want, and you just did the thing you believed in. I've never been that brave. Not once. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't see the woman who dismissed me. I saw the woman who'd spent her entire adult life performing a version of success she wasn't sure she believed in, terrified that if she stopped, she'd have nothing underneath. You could be, I said. Brave, I mean. It's not too late. She leaned her head against my shoulder. She hadn't done that since we were teenagers. Your kid is going to be extraordinary, I said. He already is. He gets it from you, she whispered. He gets it from himself. I just gave him a launch pad. Elijah starts at Louisiana State University this fall, environmental science, full scholarship, with a research placement in the Department of Oceanography and Coastal Sciences studying sediment loss in the Atchafalaya Basin. He calls me every Sunday to talk about his coursework, and every conversation ends the same way, thanks, Aunt Tessa. For building the thing that caught me. Margaux and I aren't fixed. 15 years of distance doesn't dissolve over one Christmas dinner and a porch conversation. But we're talking now, really talking, not performing. Last month, she asked me to give a presentation at her firm's annual charity gala about Launchpad. She introduced me to a room of 200 people. This is my sister, Tessa Calloway. She's the founder and executive director of the Launchpad STEM initiative, and she's the reason my son has a future. She also makes terrible coffee, and I love her. It was the first time she'd introduced me without shrinking me into a single word. Vivian volunteers at Launchpad's Baton Rouge satellite office now. She stuffs envelopes and organizes supply drives and asks every student she meets what they want to be when they grow up, and then she listens to the answer. Really listens. The way I needed her to listen to me, all those years ago. And me? I still teach. I teach 9th graders how a cell divides. I teach high schoolers how to write grant proposals. I teach 26 staff members how to see the engineer inside the kid who can't name the planets. I teach myself, every day, that the work matters even when nobody claps. Because here's what 15 years in a classroom taught me that no boardroom ever could: the most powerful thing you can do for another human being is believe in them before they believe in themselves. That's not a hobby. That's not a small life. That's the whole point. And if somebody introduces you by the smallest version of what you do, let them. Because one day, the full version will introduce itself, and it won't need your permission. If you're watching this and you've ever been the person at the table who gets summarized in one word, she teaches, he paints, she volunteers, I want you to know something. The people who shrink you are usually the people who are most afraid of their own smallness. Keep building. Keep showing up. The work speaks eventually. It always does. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the thing you do that your family doesn't understand? And who was the first person who finally saw you? Subscribe if you haven't. We tell stories like this every week. Real, complicated, and always honest. I'll see you in the next one.